the November 17th meeting of the Radnor Zoning Hearing Board. First order of business, could you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have one item on the agenda this evening, appeal number 2976. The applicant, JGVS LP, property located at 936 County Line Road and zoned C1, seeks relief from Chapter 280, Section 122, with particular reference to subparagraphs C1 and C5A-C in Chapter 280, Section 125, in addition to any other zoning section under Chapter 280, Article 21, which may be applicable in regard to the erection of a pole sign within the required setback. Counselor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ernie Angelos. I have the privilege this evening of representing the applicant, JGVS LP, which owns the subject property located at 936 County Line Road. As the chairman indicated, we are here seeking a variance from Section 280-122C with particularity to C5 for the purposes of erecting a 8-foot high, 16 square foot freestanding pole sign within the required 10-foot setback from the street. I respectfully submit this evening that we will show that my client's proposal is compliant with all the other zoning regulations as to size, height, and illumination. However, because of the unique location of the building itself, there is insufficient room from its front to the street in order for him to fully comply with the 10-foot setback. I also respectfully submit that the building's location on the property is resulting in a shallowness of the lot size, which prohibits my client, as I indicated, from erecting the sign within the 10-foot setback. Consequently, we believe that the variance is needed in order to erect this sign, which is otherwise we would submit compliant. Lastly, and as an alternative, before we begin, if the board is not inclined to find a hardship, I respectfully submit that this might be warranting of a de minimis variance, as the request amounts to a minor deviation from the zoning code, the required 10-foot setback. And we hope that my client's testimony this evening with the location of the sign, in addition to other particularities of the sign, will be sufficient for the relief we're seeking. And at this time, if I may, can I talk to my client? I do have an exhibit packet. Can I hand that up at this point?
Yes, please, bring it up.
We would be asking that these exhibits, which I believe all have been previously submitted, be made a part of the record. Do you want me to stay here while I do it, or how do you prefer? For purposes of...
No, I think we will accept the exhibits as presented in this package, hand it up, and just let's swear in your witness and proceed.
And sir, if you'll raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And state your full name, please,
My name is James D'Angelo,
and spell your last name.
D''A, N as in Nancy, G-E-L-O.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. D'Angelo, you are the general partner of JGVS LP,
Yes, I am.
and that is the entity that owns the subject property at 936 County Line Road.
Yes.
Can you use the mic, please? Thank you.
Sorry about that. When did JGVS purchase the property?
April 29th, 2016.
And does it occupy the property, or are there other tenants in the property?
I occupy the ground floor. I run a state farm agency there, and the second floor is a law firm tenant.
And the building itself, the footprint, did you do any renovations to the building, or is that footprint exactly how it existed when you purchased it?
Yes, I did not do any renovations.
Now, are there any signs currently located on the property?
There are. My tenant has a sign that's been there. She leased back for me, so she was also the previous owner of the building.
If I can draw your attention to Exhibit 4 of the packet. That's a front rendition of the subject property, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that sign right there, LLF Lewis Law Firm, that's the sign you were just referencing, correct?
Correct.
And that sign, when the tenant vacates, will be removed. Is that your intent?
That's correct.
And the intent of this sign is to replace that sign and also to provide you with some signage for your business.
Correct.
When will the lease with the existing law firm tenant expire?
End of this month, so end of November.
So this sign would be predicated upon the other sign coming down because that tenant's going to vacate and you'll take over the whole building.
That is correct, sir.
Now, if I can have you look to Exhibit 5 of the packet. This is the proposed rendition of the sign you would like to place on the property, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And can you explain for the board the size and type of the sign?
Well, the proposed sign is a 4x4 sign. It's set 8 foot high and hugging the building, so it's as close to the building as possible, within a few inches of touching my building.
So the sign it's depicted on the picture to the right, which is marked after. The location will actually be closer to the building.
Then it appears?
Correct.
Yes, it will.
Okay.
That was the best they could do in their graphics, I think.
And from the grass to the front of the building, at the edge of the sidewalk, what's the distance between the front of the building and the sidewalk?
From the edge of the sidewalk to the building,
Yes.
it's 7.5 feet.
Okay. And can you estimate the distance between the grass and the street?
I think it's about 4.5 feet, the sidewalk, the width of the sidewalk to the street.
So we're talking roughly 12 feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that would be insufficient under the zoning code for the 10-foot setback.
Correct.
With respect, do you have any other signage on the property for your business?
I do. I have a decal with my name on it on the front window.
Okay. And prior to coming in this evening, you did a count of the total signage area for the property, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And I'd ask you to turn to Exhibit 6 of the packet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is your calculation, correct?
Yes, I did this calculation and assumed the signage that's actually still up there, even though it hasn't come down yet.
And per your calculation, what's the total square feet of signage that you have and propose to have?
Well, I proposed 59.7, but it'll end up being less than that because you'll take out where it says law firms temp sign 21.54. That'll.
Keep your voice up.
Oh, thank you.
You'll take out something.
I'll be taking out the law firm temp sign, which says 21.54. That'll be coming out when my tenant leaves.
And based on your calculations here, what's the amount that you believe is permitted under the code?
The code is 2 times the frontage, so I calculated that by measuring the building at 63.34.
So your signage would be under the proposed or required signage area under the code?
Yes.
Did you review any other sign options in this process?
Well, I did look at an option to put my signs up high on the sides of the building, on either side of the, it's a stairwell on the front. I'm not sure if it's
So if
easy
we-
to see.
Just to kind of help us, if we turn to Exhibit 4.
Let me see if I can describe this a little better.
I can help you. You were, correct me if I'm wrong, you were planning to put signs on either side of that portion of the property that jets out from the back part of the building with the green roof?
Yes, correct. And that's what I was planning on doing at first, yes.
And they would be perpendicular signs? Or, correct, perpendicular signs.
Perpendicular
To the
signs.
road.
Yes.
Okay. And the basis for your need to have a perpendicular sign?
Well, I found it important for, due to traffic and just being able to, I was worried about cars driving by trying to find me, people trying to find me and get to my business. It's a pretty dangerous road. People move really fast, and I was worrying about how they would brake and whether it would become a dangerous situation finding me late as they're crossing past the road. So I thought a perpendicular sign would be best to give the visual earlier.
And what was the basis for foregoing that option and proceeding with this one?
Well, on the right side, as far as the way we're viewing the picture, there is a code that the 15-foot code limit.
So it's possible that you would have needed further zoning relief, more than what you were requesting this evening.
I'm sorry, what's the limit you're referring to?
I believe it's a 15-foot height limit. So the signs themselves would be over that height limit, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you would have two signs or one sign on either side.
That was the idea at first, yes.
So you'd need relief for both of those signs above the 15-foot height requirement.
Correct.
Okay. Additionally, is just minor additions here. Turning to Exhibits 7 and 8, they are more of a design plan for the actual sign themselves, and then an electrical plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If it were granted this evening, when would you think you would put the sign up? Pending
As soon
permitting.
as allowable, no earlier than my tenant leaving,
And you said that was the end of November.
end of this month.
Has this sign been reviewed by Design Review Board?
It is, I believe, on the agenda for next month's meeting. We were advised that we needed to appear before the zoning hearing board before the design board would render its decision. Now, you've been at the property for how long again?
About 6 months, 5 months maybe.
And this is a commercial district, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there any other businesses up and down the street which have signs?
There is.
And relative to your building, where are they located?
Both directions, up and down the road. Same side as, I'm on county line, so obviously we're referring to my side here for Radnor Township. On either side of me, going east and going west.
Are they perpendicular signs?
Yes.
Yeah, the building directly adjacent to you, if we're looking at exhibit number 4 here, the building to the left, does that building have a sign?
It does.
And what type of sign does it have?
I forget the terminology.
Can you describe it?
Sure, it's got a pole sticking out from the building, and it hangs down.
Okay. And that's perpendicular?
That is correct.
Okay. And is there, there's a shopping center off to the right, some distance from the building, looking at Exhibit 5 here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that has a sign as well?
I believe 2 signs, yes.
And are they perpendicular as well?
They are.
That's all I have.
In terms of the property, is it all office use?
Yes.
First and second floor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do members of the board have questions?
It might be good for the applicant to put down on one of these plans where the sign is going to be, because I'm a little vague as to where exactly, and I could then refer to, does it have measurement?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the prior application package had, the package we received had a plan, and it would have been useful to have utilized that in terms of what we've been provided with. Because I agree with the solicitor that the concept that's embodied in that mock-up of the location of the sign is not at all helpful. But let me ask a couple questions. You indicated that since you have purchased the property, you've done no renovations that would have brought the building closer to the street. The front, in essence, the front conditions are as they were when you acquired the property.
Yes, sir. Correct.
Did you find at the time that you acquired the property that the signage that is already on the building was insufficient for your use?
I did.
Because I'm struggling with hardship here, and this is not a de minimis variance. And I'm also troubled by the fact that that sign is that close to that road. So explain to me what you believe the hardship to be here, because there's adequate signage, it appears currently. You have a tenant that's leaving in 2 weeks with a large sign on the side of the building. And that seems to me to be the natural place to put this sign. It may not face the street, but it is the condition that you found the property in when you purchased it, and it doesn't require variance relief. So explain to me what the hardship is.
Maybe before they could or should answer that question, let's talk about the de minimis nature of this. So as John mentioned, we don't really know where the sign is. So I think we need to get a little better idea. If we're off by 2 inches from the 10 feet, that's a different analysis.
I mean, my understanding is it's 7.5 feet from the road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's 25%, a 25% incursion into the setback.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. So from the front of the property to the street, we're talking 12 feet?
Correct.
So I guess theoretically, if you put it within the first 2 feet of your property, you wouldn't need to be here, I suppose. Okay.
That's true.
And having that sign within the first 2 feet of your property doesn't work, is that?
I don't think so. I think the way that the road, the tightness of that road, there's no shoulder, it's curb. You know, as I was prospecting for the building for purchase, I had trouble finding the building myself. My customers have also said the same type of thing. At the rate of speed that people are going, stopping and starting, I think that the proposed sign idea that I have here brings it safer. I really do.
Okay, so that picture, which isn't necessarily accurate, I think you stated, it would be, the actual sign where you're planning to put that pole would be 7.5 feet from the edge of the street going towards the building?
Well, I'm thinking of it from the building side, so it's going to be hugging up to the building as close as possible, within inches
Okay.
of the building. So the
okay.
sign will then be 4 feet and then the
right.
borders from there.
Okay, so from the edge of that sign to the street, how, is that the 7.5 feet that you had mentioned, or is it more than that?
I believe the 7.5 feet, as indicated on that exhibit, is from the edge of the grass to the front of the building.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I heard. So I'm trying to figure out where this sign is going to be and how far it's going to be away from the street.
Okay.
And it sounds like it's going to be more than 7.5 feet away from the street. And as I said, if it was 10 feet away from the street, we wouldn't have a problem. But we have to know. We have to
Right.
know
I understand.
where that sign's going to be.
Should be.
On the, I guess, the west, I'm looking at, I'm sorry, I'm looking at, which exhibit is it in your package? I'm looking at, I apologize, bear with me for a second. I'm looking at Exhibit 5. The picture on the right, the denominated the after picture, that shows the approximate location of the requested sign. To the right of that, under the pillar, I guess for the porch enclosure or whatever that small roof is that a brick wall there? I mean,
On the lower half,
on
yes,
the
it's
lower
brick.
on the lower portion. I'm trying to appreciate your concern about the perceived issue that might be created in terms of safety and the appropriate placement of that sign, which is still effective for your purpose of letting people know where you are. Is it possible to affix that sign to that brick wall? And I know that there's a limitation on wall signage, but to the extent that you are removing the law firm's sign after their departure at the end of November, it would seem to me that you would have sufficient space under the code for a wall sign that, you know, the sign would deal with, I guess, eastbound traffic, not necessarily westbound traffic, I understand that, but it wouldn't be that close to the street. It could serve some purpose, or alternatively, when your tenant moves out, just affix that sign to the wall where your law firm tenant's sign is now.
Just for clarification, the sign on the brick wall there that you were suggesting would also be a parallel sign rather than a perpendicular sign?
It would be, and I guess I'm using terms as we have them in our zoning code. I'm talking about a wall sign, not a projecting sign,
fair.
which is what has been called perpendicular sign. So yes, it would be a wall sign under our code.
I noticed the Exhibit 6 has for lease at the bottom. Are you planning to lease the top floor again, and then do you need another sign for that?
No, I am planning on trying to lease that out again, and my concept was to put it all in one spot for signage for the whole building.
So would you put in a new tenant in place of that for lease piece of it?
I would have that so I could slide it out for lease, and yes, correct, and then give that 1/3 space for my tenant to slide it out and then put their signage within there.
Just wanted to call the attention of the board so that if those who may not be as familiar, if you look at tab 5, the before photo provides a perspective of the several buildings proceeding eastbound, each of which I believe have a commercial use in them. You can see the one projecting sign that was referred to previously in testimony off of the property next door to the east. And then, you know, it gives you some perspective of the current circumstance there.
Which is why we're suggesting we're not really altering the character of the neighborhood. There's a
Well, I mean, I would
perpendicular
point.
Well, your
I
adjoining
point out-
neighbor doesn't have a pole sign
Yeah, I mean,
7
it-
feet from the road.
it is perpendicular to the street, but it's not on a pole. It's probably at a height of about 4 feet as opposed to the 8 feet, which is being suggested here. That is related to Mr. Riley's question having to do with hardship is sort of whether, if hardship were to be found, this is the minimal relief which is required to deal with the circumstance in terms of both the height of the sign and also the lighting of the sign. Those are a couple questions that occur to me.
We would suggest that that is accurate, that this would be the minimum relief necessary to erect a freestanding pole sign, which is permitted under Section C5. The illumination.
I think the after on number 5 is the perspective on that could be a little challenged, because if you look to the entrance to the building on the right in terms of that little porch, you know, the after photo sort of portrays the sign in proportion to be sort of what I would say would be 5 or 6 feet high, as opposed to a more realistic perspective of what 8 foot's going to look like there in the context of the existing conditions. I'll stop there and again take a pause to see if anybody else has any questions.
Can you address where the sign is going to be, Mr. Riley?
Yes.
Just to get back to your point, Mr. Ryan, you had asked where that sign was going to be, and I think a good spot to show you, I hope this helps, on Exhibit 5, you
Yeah.
can see there's a tree there, which has since been removed, and if you look at the other Exhibit 4, you can see that it's removed.
Exhibit 4?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So from a east and west standpoint, the sign is going to be further back than depicted on Exhibit 5.
Frankly, we're still guessing, and that's problematic to me, and it's just an issue.
How many feet off the building are you going to put the sign?
You have to keep your voice up.
How many feet from the front of the building are you going to put the sign?
From 4 feet.
And then that's where the pole goes, right?
That'd be correct. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was. I apologize.
Any other questions of the witness or counsel right now? Okay.
Thank you.
Relax, but I'm just going to open it up now for discussion among the board members. I've heard concerns expressed regarding hardship. I've heard a reference to the possibility that perhaps it's de minimis. Bud, do you have anything in particular, any perspective you want to share?
I'm, certainly the newest member of the board here, and I'm very open to hear what the other members say, because I certainly can understand the rationale for having the sign there. On the other hand, we do have an obligation to maintain the zoning rules, so I'm very interested for what the others have to say.
Well, I think that, I mean, I'd be interested in a de minimis argument, but not knowing exactly where this thing's going to be. I mean, if it's your testimony that it's going to be, I think you just said 4 feet from the front of the property, so that that would be like 2 feet of the sign on each side, I guess, right? It's a 4-foot wide sign.
Sign in the middle.
Yeah.
Sign in the middle, yes.
So that gets us from the edge of the sign out to the street, 6 feet, I guess? Is my math right? Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
that's correct.
And you have to be 10 feet away from the,
That's correct.
yeah, all right. All right.
If I might just say one thing, I'm not going to speak as to whether this is de minimis or not, that's your decision, but the case law is very clear that if you find it is de minimis, that gives you the option to grant the variance, but you can't be compelled to grant the variance. It's basically your call, and the cases are very clear on that. So if you find that they've gotten into de minimis variance land, that permits you but does not obligate you to grant de minimis relief. It's your call.
And if I'm exceeding my jurisdiction here, the members will jump in. Given that there are 4 members here, to get the relief you're asking for, you need 3 votes. I am not of a mind to grant the variance as requested, particularly because I think given the height of the sign and given the lighting of the sign, it is not the minimum relief which is required to address the hardship should it be found to exist. Given that, I think if we just proceed, you're going to get no vote, you're going to be denied. If there was a consensus among the board members to head in this direction, I think an option is to continue to hear the hearing until December. Ask you to come back with a plan which much more clearly and definitively specifies a location. That in my mind drops the height to more like 4 or 5 feet, and I think should be I would be more sympathetic to a non-lit sign. I throw that out as a thought, and I would open it up for comments to the board members.
I certainly would not have a problem if you wanted to reconsider how this request is being made and revising perhaps either the location or the method of installation of the sign. I don't know if we have the authority to weigh in on the issue of illuminated, whether it be externally or internally illuminated. I think we sort of take the sign as we find it. We leave for design review board the issue of illumination versus not illuminated. And obviously to the extent that you were able to come back with, well, ideally you resolve your issue without the need for a variance. And I think that there are opportunities, particularly with the departure of your tenant in November, that provides you the opportunity to solve your sign issue without the need for a variance. But to the extent that you come back in December with a revised application in request for a variance, I don't want to necessarily weigh in on what would be more or less favorable at that time. I'll just take the revised application as it's put before the board. But as to this application in front of us today, I don't see a variance. It's not de minimis, and there's no way I could see clear to supporting it in the current form.
I think that, well, as far as illumination, I mean, you're certainly entitled to have an illuminated sign. There are rules that can only show the letters and so forth. There can't be any light escaping, but, so that's really your call if you want illumination. I think that because of the way this building's positioned on this lot and the very small front area, I think that there is a hardship involved here, and it's not one of your doing. So I would see a hardship in this case. But I don't know if we're,
That my view is that I can see the hardship as well, and I can see that that the sign would, in my view, would probably be more acceptable if it were smaller, or if it were you know, closer to the building, or perhaps on the building. But in any event, looking at what you proposed, I do see that there would be a hardship with your building to get a sign, and I'm just not sure whether this is the right sign, and maybe I don't have all the information about whether that size is correct or not, but nonetheless, I could see where there would be a hardship at getting it within the 10 feet. So my view would kind of mirror George's on this.
Now, a couple thoughts. One is, and to the extent you two want to go off and consult, we'll give you the time to do that. If you want to ask us to take a vote so that you have clarity, so that you can not pursue whatever other options you might want to pursue, we'll defer to your judgment in that case and take a vote. The benefit of it, to me, the benefit of the continuance is that it will save you reapplying, re-advertising, whatnot. So, what are your thoughts?
If I may, I'm going to... Am I just speaking loud enough? I apologize. We would respectfully request the continuance, I think at this point, to provide a more detailed plan and location of the sign.
Mr. Chairman, if there were some items discussed about sign height and whatnot, and I know that the entrance drive to this property is an entrance only. The next building up is the exit. Maybe a sign lower could start to interfere with some site distances, so as the applicant is going back and reanalyzing this location, that be taken into consideration. County Line Road can be extremely busy, and trying to pull out and go west onto County Line Road, if that sign's going to create some site distance issues, to be extremely mindful of that.
Thank you for making that point. John, is there anything magic here other than just granting the continuance and moving on? I want to make
No,
sure.
I mean, I think when I hear the board, there is some members of the board think there's a measure of hardship. I think there's a little skepticism about whether this is the minimum relief. I think a more detailed application, including the line of sight, and will, you know, the sign block the ability of traffic to see further down the road. And these are things that, you know, you can consider, and we also precision in the application. We do have to, you know, grant a specific location and know what, you know, how big the sign is in terms of area, how tall it is, and precisely where it is. I think the application is a little soft on detail there. And then, but we could, you know, you could, if you want, we could continue it. You could continue this, and we could take it up again in December.
Would anyone like to make a motion to continue this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the request for continuance be granted in this matter.
Is there a second?
second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Will these guys be next, first on the agenda in December? Can we do that?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
And for the record, I think there's still time here, but we would waive any applicable MPC timeframe for the board's decision.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.